Major support for these broadcasts is provided by the CUNY TV Foundation, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's window company, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Geneva Burns, Gian Tomasi and Webster, M&T Bank, the Wyckoff Group, Chelsea Lighting, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate, AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi, USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International, NYC, Cushman & Wakefield, DDG, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Eastern Union Funding, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Hersha Hospitality Trust, Investors Bank, New Banks, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katzimatidis, Red Apple Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, Madison Realty Capital, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, People's United Bank, Popular Community Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, and these friends.
Can you believe that food and wine and certain windows are even manufactured in New York City? Yes, these are manufactured in New York City. At one time, New York City had a lot of manufacturing, not too many. But today I've assembled these 4 individuals who are going to provide their insight on manufacturing in New York City. Today my guests include Steve Chen, who is the Executive Vice President of Crystal Windows and Doors. Garrett Oliver, the esteemed brewmaster of the Brooklyn Brewery. Spiros, you have to give your last name.
Theofilatos.
And you are the brewmaster, principal of?
Beyond Kombucha.
We'll figure out what kombucha is. And last but not least, a returnee, Mark Snyder, who is the proprietor of Red Hook Winery and also Angel Share Wine. So you're in business 3 years, correct? You're in business, your family's been in business 23 years.
Correct.
You've been in business 5 years. And you're the old man over here. 25 years. How difficult is it to be in the manufacturing business in New York City today?
Well, who wants to start? I mean, I think
he
might be the best guy to tell you right now. I can tell you what it's like as the old man.
Okay, tell me.
But it's well, you know, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating development. Most people don't know that 100 years ago, Brooklyn was one of the great brewing capitals of the world. There were 48 breweries in Brooklyn. They made 10% of all the beer in the country, and that was in a day when people drank a lot more beer than they do now. So it was a great manufacturing center, not only for that, but for many other things. And slowly but surely, as the city became more affluent, and as we got better transportation systems, everything starts to move, you know, out of the city.
I mean, the Brooklyn Brewery is well known. It's known in Brooklyn. It's known around the country. It's known around the world. And, you know, today Brooklyn is big. Okay, I'm a Brooklyn person, and I love Brooklyn. But you are, you know, this is a business over there. On the other side, you know, people are surprised to hear that wine is made in Brooklyn. Wine in Red Hook? I mean, let's be realistic. You know, Williamsburg is the home. They had Schaefer, Rheingold. They had these beers over there. You know, the Bronx was different breweries, you know. Wine?
I think just like Garrett was saying, you know, there's a lot of wine being made in Brooklyn throughout the years. And
probably made with his feet.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, definitely.
Right.
But, you know, that really disappeared, and the tradition of making wine in homes disappeared. And for me, it was a great opportunity seeing the manufacturing disappear.
But how do you, I mean, how do you decide to go into the wine? I mean, I knew you're in the distribute business, but how do you decide to go out there and, I mean, you don't have the vineyards. Are there vineyards in Brooklyn?
They're not vineyards now, no.
Okay, I'm talking about today. I mean, there
Stay
may have
tuned.
okay, there may be vineyards, but you know, even in the North Fork, they bring their vines from California and from Europe and France. Okay.
Well, the world, I mean, that's
Right.
vineyard planting. But the vineyards are all in New York. I mean, we focus 100% on New York grapes.
North Fork over
Yeah,
there.
North Fork, Finger Lakes.
Right. So how hard is it for you to be manufacturing wine?
Well, there are parts that are probably more difficult than anywhere in the world, and there are parts of manufacturing that are easier than anywhere else in the world. First of all, we live in a city that has unlimited resources in terms of finding things and finding connections, and people want to do business in New York. So, you know, certain things like getting machinery and you know, finding workforce to do some of the
Right, but you have vats, and you know, some of these things come from Germany. From you know,
True.
I mean, these products are coming over there now. Here, now we go. We're going to get back to you in a second because you're another beverage. Windows? I mean, nobody would think that. They think of the Midwest for windows. They think of Pittsburgh, you know, Alcoa Place, you know, or you know, where these other things. They don't think of windows being manufactured in Flushing.
Yes.
I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, how do you manufacture windows in Flushing? You fabricate, you know. I mean, how much space? Is it next to, you know, Citi Field? We're manufacturing windows. You get a baseball bat and a window.
It involves a lot of heavy equipment, and it's difficult. I agree with you. It's difficult to manufacture in New York City. The average New York City's electrical rates, I use a lot of heavy equipment, so we're paying about, 23 cents per kilowatt hour. The national average is about 13 cents, and there's certain states where it's only 7 cents per kilowatt hour. Tunnels, bridges, I deal with a lot with heavy equipment and also heavy raw materials. I have glasses, 6 rackfuls of glass that gets shipped to my factory every day, 8x8 sheets. Now, they tack on an extra energy surcharge and surcharges just to get through the GW Bridge and the Whitestone Expressway, Whitestone Bridge, and also detention time.
Do you think people buy your products because you are manufactured in New York? Do you think that helps perhaps the feeling of why they want to support the Brooklyn Brewery, besides the fact that you have one of the world's best brewmasters and also the editor of the Oxford Companion to Making Wine? Okay, but
Beer too.
beer. I was joking, you know that. Okay, do you think people want that because of the loyalty to the product?
Our factory is set up where we're in the biggest window market in the United States. There's high-rise buildings all over the place. So our close proximity to the biggest window market helps out a lot. Instead of waiting 2 or 3 days for shipment of windows from the Midwest, from where you're saying cold, icy, frozen tundras, we're close to the job site. We could service it a lot quicker, and our lead times are a lot quicker. So there is advantage.
Astoria. I mean, what do you think of when you go to Astoria? You think of Greek diners, okay? You think of, you know, good restaurants. You think of convenience to Crescent Street and coming over, you know, over there. And as I always said, you know, some great restaurants and Costco, until, you know, they had certain Costcos over there. How do you come up with this product? I mean, when somebody told me about what it was, I said, what is it? I know what his product is. I know what he does. I know what he does. What is it?
Okay, it's fermented sweet tea. It's 2,500 or 3,000 years old, dates back to Central Asia. It's loaded with health enhancing things like
I like
vitamins.
beer.
Beer is
Yes.
great.
We understand, you know, when Brooklyn Brewery went in, and as we just heard from Garrett before, you know, there was, you know, there hadn't been new breweries in years. Okay, this is a different type of product. How do you wake up one day with those feet over there, and stomp on? I mean, how do you come up with this type of product?
It's popular. There's a $55 million a year business going on. Kombucha is actually really super popular on the West Coast. This is where I first was introduced to it. Couldn't get it on the East Coast. Started making it myself because it's based on tea. I've loved tea since I was a kid. I was making it better than anything I
See,
could buy.
Jewish kids growing up in my age, they would have tea in a glass. We called it a glass-off tea. You know, you had a glass. Okay, it was this hot thing you had to worry about over there.
And
You
then
know,
there's Russian, they call it grib in Russia. This is super, super cancer preventative either. There's entire towns in Russia that have
because of Brighton Beach with that, okay?
That's true, probably true. And Astoria is an interesting place, Queens in general, but Astoria is like the Steinway factory. And we spoke about how Brooklyn used to be teeming with breweries. Mine was actually the first alcohol-positive brewery in Queens since Prohibition. After me followed Single Cut, which is now up there and kicking it. They're incredible. Bridge and Tunnel, Rockaway, there's a bunch of Queens breweries now. So it's all craft brewing.
Hear Steve talking before about the surcharge, the electrical prices, and all this. This has an effect. And you know, convenience, transportation. Red Hook's a nice neighborhood, but part of the problem is the transportation over there. Williamsburg, everybody wants to be in.
I think that you have to embrace, the place, the place that you are. I mean, when I first came to Brooklyn Brewery, 1994, as I was telling you earlier, there wasn't even an ATM in the whole neighborhood. If you needed money, you literally had to get on the subway and go to Manhattan. It's a very different place now. And I think that one thing that's remained, however, is that people really like the fact that Brooklyn Brewery was there. When they built luxury high-rises and hotels and apartment buildings and everything else all around us, I thought we were going to have the same problems that we see across the rest of the country. Oh, I can smell the brewery. Even though you've moved next door to a brewery, people will literally move next door to a manufacturing plant, say a coffee roaster, and then complain about the coffee smell. We don't actually have that problem. People say it's really cool. It's one of the reasons they moved to the neighborhood was because the brewery is there and because they think that it's a cool cultural center. So we've really made it into a cultural center. Not that there's anything wrong with Con Ed, but that's not where we buy our electricity. We buy our electricity from community energy. We were the first 100% wind power building in New York City.
So you've been able to adapt to reduce your expenses.
Well, no, actually our expenses go up. As a result of that, wind energy is more expensive than conventional energy. We're just putting our money where our mouth is, and where our mouth is that, we think sustainability is important.
Let's talk about your product over there. You brought two...
Yeah, well, one thing that people might be surprised to know is going on in New York City is that we make a range of beers that are re-fermented in the bottle, just like champagne. And as much as I love champagne, people look at this bottle and they say the beer's in a champagne bottle, and it's actually the reverse. Champagne is in a beer bottle and uses a beer technique in order to get its bubbles.
And in addition to be called champagne, it has to be from France. I mean, otherwise...
There is that too.
There's sparkling. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but terroir here is in the is in the heart. So we do get some things from the local area, and we also get ideas, et cetera, from other places. This is re-fermentation in the bottle, so it goes into the bottle flat, undergoes a re-fermentation in the bottle, which gives it the very high level of carbonation and texture that it has. And this is something we're doing entirely on North 11th Street in Brooklyn. And then this beer is called Green Market Wheat. We make it. It's a new beer that we make for Grow NYC, which is the green market system. So all those farmers markets that you see out there. And I was one of the founders for Slow Food USA. So this is a thing near and dear to my heart. They asked
What
to
is
make
Slow Foods USA?
To make a long story short, Slow Food is an eco-gastronomical organization, and it seeks to preserve worldwide food culture while also making sure that we have the biological diversity necessary to make real food. So it's about the land, it's about culture wherever it is, and preserving it and getting away from fast food and also slowing down your life enough to enjoy things. But this is actually made from about 75% New York State grown ingredients. So the barley and the wheat are grown in New York State. Peter Martins is the farmer. Andrea and Valley Malt does the malting. And by next year, I hope we'll have New York State grown hops to go into it.
As someone would say, it's New York, it's grown
here.
New York product over there.
Yeah.
Spiros, what do you have over here?
Okay, I loved what you said about champagne. This is basically the same premise. All of these go into the bottle flat and condition in the bottle. They get carbonated in the bottle. This is the classic kombucha technique. It's the kind that we saw before the federal government decided it's an alcohol beverage, and you saw a recall in Whole Foods of the national leading brand. I came around just about that time and started to do this. This one here is probably my favorite. This is what they call a Jun. It's a honey-based kombucha with 9 different aphrodisiac herbs from South America and domestic as well, and New York City local honey from Andrew Cote. So there's more local. I love being in step. It's great. Here's Hojicha. Hojicha is a Japanese fire-roasted green tea, roasted in porcelain. It has like a caramelly flavor, also fermented with organic sugar, also carbonated. It's got a bit of a sour to it from the fermentation, and then the caramel and chocolatey overtones are fantastic. Blueberry, which is a red rooibos blueberry, organic blueberry blend, same premise, and then vanilla rooibos over here, which is the base of something that I make called Mava Roca, which is the maple vanilla rooibos kombucha ale on tap at places like the Queen's Kickshaw in Astoria, Colicchio and Sons in Manhattan, several other places. That one is a 7% alcohol kombucha ale, gluten-free, sorghum-based, and a lot of fun.
Mr. Wine,
Yep.
talk to me about your 2 products.
I brought 2 of the 70 wines we currently have in bottle. There's a Riesling from Ryan's Vineyard in Seneca Lake, and a Cabernet Sauvignon from Joe McCarry's Vineyard on the North Fork.
So this comes from Joe's grapes,
Correct?
and it's made in Red Hook. Since like Garrett is the brewmaster at Brooklyn, you're the brewmaster at your product. Your brewmasters are from people from California, right?
Yep. And Christopher Nicholson, who's a wonderful guy originally from Alaska and now lives in Greenpoint.
Now, here's a question that I'm going to ask everyone over there. How do you distribute your product? Do you have your own sales force on the windows?
We have our own sales force. We have a New York Metro sales force. We also distribute from Crystal distributors from Maine all the way down to South Carolina, and as far Midwest as St. Louis and Chicago. We also have a facility in Chicago, a distribution center in Allentown, in Cleveland, and also another factory in St. Louis.
And how do you promote? How do people know about Crystal?
Trade magazines, talk to architects, engineers.
I mean, many people, when they think of windows, because of probably due to branding in the same way that Brooklyn Brewery is branded, people think of Anderson or Pella.
Yes.
These are well-known, very luxury, high-end windows over there. You're
margin-
more industrial. You're
more industrial. We do a lot more aluminum windows, the mid-rise to high-rise buildings. Some of the buildings you see on Park Avenue and even on this street have our windows on it. It was a little bit difficult for me to bring a sample out here today, so just go
Next time you
outside
bring me
there.
a little baby window.
Yeah,
okay,
I'll show you a few pictures out there.
And how do you distribute your product? Because you're not only in Brooklyn, you're around the country.
Well, we're kind of a weird business that way. The whole thing of craft beer in New York City, when we started, say 1990 or so, we started in 1988, but 1990 or so, we've been selling the beer door to door by hand, pretty much. And back then, people didn't know anything about craft beer. Beer was yellow, fizzy, and tasteless. That's what beer was, as far as people knew. So, you'd go and you say, I have a beer that's amber and has real flavor. And they're like, it looks funny.
People would say
And
that
it tastes
low
funny,
and brow,
too. Get out of
German
here.
beers.
Yeah, it's like, and so we were unable to get a distributor, and we started distributing our beer ourselves. Then
With the horse and buggy? With the stallion?
virtually, we actually have pictures coming out of our warehouse of horse and buggy from the 1800s, so don't laugh. We actually started to take on other brands because they said we can't sell our beer either. And that included Sierra Nevada from California, it included the great Trappist beers like Chimay, et cetera. To make a very long story short, by the time we sold off that part of the business, we were selling about 250 beers that were not ours. And we actually established craft beer in New York City. And we basically,
And today?
we actually built the ocean that we
Okay,
swim in
and
now.
today?
And today we have another company called Beehive, which distributes our beers, because what happened is that we had been an unprofitable brewery that was running a relatively profitable trucking business, which is what distribution is. It then reversed, and we realized, wait a minute, we're a profitable brewery dragging behind us this unprofitable trucking business, because we had like 12 trucks. The next guy up from us had like 5 times, 6 times as many trucks as us. And we were like, why are we in a trucking business?
We're in the beer.
We're in the beer business, so we got out of the trucking business.
And how about you? How do you distribute your product?
Being as small and specific as I am, I'm kind of actually moving away from bottles for sustainability purposes. I'm trying to get actually we're in talks with Whole Foods about getting a growler fill program there. So I'm just delivering kegs, and it's self-distributed. So I'm at the place where you guys were back
You know,
in
it's
1990.
interesting you talk about kegs. When I was at Pominock, he was showing me, and I was totally surprised, kegs of wine
Sure.
that a number of restaurants are taking, you know, as opposed to...
We do it from Red Hook.
Right, so you're doing the same thing with kegs. How do you distribute your products?
Well, I started as a distributor, luckily, so I have Angel Share, and Angel Share distributes the wines. But I think what, you know, the lesson for all of us to, you know, be aware of and learn, and I think what's important about the relevance of a manufacturing facility of any size, whether it's Spiro or you know, whoever the largest is of our group, you need distribution to maintain the importance of the product. So it's great if you have a local following, but you know, we've got distribution in Paris, and I've got, you know, several states throughout, and it's really important because you have to dig those roots in so that you have, you know, not all your eggs in one market.
But here's the question, and it relates to distribution, it relates to selling your product. Branding. Branding is very important, okay? Crystal, you know, I've seen, and I think one of the good things is that when I pass a new building, there's the Crystal logo in the building, which is a branding situation, okay? You have a brand, okay? People, there may be other breweries in Brooklyn, but everybody knows Brooklyn Brewery. I mean,
Well,
you've
that's nice to say. You know, it's funny because when we first started, of course, and again, this goes back, people said, you're naming a brewery after Brooklyn? Oh my God, that's horrible.
But that,
you know, it's like,
that's
I mean,
when,
you know.
Garrett, that was when Brooklyn wasn't hip.
Yeah,
Okay?
that was like 10 years ago. It was less than 10 years
right,
ago.
in the same manner, when you went, and you're in the business now 5 years, right? Red Hook, before Fairway really went into Red Hook, nobody would say Red Hook. I mean, a Kia.
People laughed at me about Red Hook.
No, Red Hook. You know, a Kia is going to Red Hook. Fairway is going to Red Hook. Why are you going there? You know, it's like, who wanted Williamsburg? Well, you want to find the drug-infested place over there with buildings which have been dilapidated. Okay.
At least Red Hook was always beautiful.
It was beautiful, but
You know.
no, it was. But Red Hook was more of a community where people lived.
Yeah.
Okay, there were certain things. I mean, Astoria and Queens has always been industrial, and you know, Flushing. You know, there's always been. It was New York City was a city of manufacturing. But what I think is really important to get your foothold here and around the country is branding and marketing. I think that's the.
I think
the
it
real-
happens organically. When you've got a good product and you've got distribution of some sort that's reliable, the branding kind of just happens. We don't, and I don't know about everyone else here, but we don't seek out to brand necessarily, but we seek out to target very careful distribution and look for people and invite people in to teach them about our product and welcome them in. And, you know, I think the other thing that's great about manufacturing today that's maybe different from before is that people are all working together.
People like visiting and seeing a brewery. You know,
That's new.
you know, it really is. You know, it's something different. You know, it's an event. You know, it's an event. I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to go in with glass over there to see windows, but you know, I think it's.
I'll go. I really
Okay.
want to see this.
No. But I think the consumer, you know, it's like what happened in the North Fork. You know, a lot of people just go out there for bachelor parties, other things. You know, I think it's a unique event. You know, we have 52 million visitors to New York City. I mean, a lot of them, you know, they may be from Europe, they know about breweries around, but they say, oh, Brooklyn Brewery, okay? They find out about your product over here. Red Hook, even when I was surprised to learn about it. You know, that's why, and I think that's important. Now, the week before, I did a show with young entrepreneurs who were in the restaurant business. They were all saying that most of them have PR agencies. Do you have PR to promote your product?
I don't.
Nope.
But yeah,
You know, everything you see on the labels, everything that's on here, everything is on there. I write all that stuff myself. You know, and the idea that somebody else should tell people, you know, who
But
you
you
are.
are an author. I mean, besides the Oxford Companion to Beer, you wrote a couple of other books over the years,
Yeah, I've
right?
written a couple of books over the years. It's a funny thing, though. You know, we're good at communicating, but I'm just old enough now that the whole idea, for example, of Twitter, and like, yes, I'm on Facebook, but it took some people coming into the brewery to convince us that we should talk about ourselves.
But you know
because
what?
people, the worst kind of person you could possibly be when I was growing up was somebody who talked about themselves all the time. So we were really, really
But you bring
quiet.
out a very important thing. I'm sitting with 4 of you. I mean, I'm a brander, okay? I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on all of this, okay? And I've created a brand in a manner. And I don't use a PR firm, it's me. You've done some branding. I mean, are you on social media?
Well, branding.
No, branding through social media, because that's what the important world today is.
We're on Facebook. Crystal's on Facebook. It was a bit difficult because not many people look into Facebook or LinkedIn for window manufacturers. We have 270 friends, and we're trying to aim for 300, maybe. But
Please, I'm happy I have more than that. Yeah. Okay. And what about you?
I leverage the living daylights out of it. I love it. Social media is probably the way that the brand is built the most. I got inquiries coming from California all the time. An interesting, beautiful thing you say about branding, I want to say, my mom does my bottle art.
That's great. I'm not a believer in social media. I just don't like it.
You're how old? 42?
43.
43. It is a surprise. I mean, somebody in the 40 age is really social media. I mean, I tweet, but I never look at other people's tweets. To be
I've never seen anybody else.
Okay, I have no idea why. Last week I did a show on Brooklyn. I had the head of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. He said, "I just tweeted that we're on your show." I said, "We're not going to be airing for 3 weeks." Okay, but people are tweeting, linking, and all the rest.
It's great, but I find it to be, it takes away the product I deal with. Is a very hands-on product, and I don't want to turn that into an electronic experience. No one agrees with me.
Okay,
I'm a
now
dinosaur.
I will tell you, I have tasted and I have enjoyed your wines and your beers, and I will try that. I have not taken a window yet from you, okay, but and we will have some later on. But I think you need. Social media is here to stay. There is no question that it's important. I think it helps the manufacturer. I mean, I think, it's like you were talking about New York products produced in New York. I think in the same manner that New York has done I Love New York promotion, there are products in upstate, downstate. I think that's important. I think knowing that manufacturing does continue to exist in New York City and in the area is really important for the economy.
Well, speaking of branding, I mean, Milton Glaser, who did the I Love New York, logo, et cetera, did also the Brooklyn Brewery logo.
I know.
And so that's been very powerful for us. But what's interesting, tying into what Mark is saying, is that I think that when we do social media, a lot of it is about telling people where to come and meet us.
Okay.
So we can say, tonight we're going to be over here, and come say hello. It's less about projecting the brand than telling people what we're all going to do together, in person.
So what we're going to do over the next couple of months is I'm going to visit every one of you so I can actually see, feel, and touch the product. And hopefully in the 13th season, which starts in September, I'll have all of you back and we'll continue this discussion. I'd like to thank Steve, Garrett, Spiros, and Mark, and I'll see you next week.